o'clock. It is now 7 p.m. and I'm ready to call this meeting to order. This is the October 16th regular meeting of the Village of Oxford's Planning Commission. And, it's now 7 p.m. so I call this meeting to order. As our tradition, we like to start every meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, so if you please kindly stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, we'll get underway here and cover the items on our agenda as I have in front of me. First off, I'd like to welcome Terry Anika as our new secretary. Terry, it's very nice to have you here, and thank you very, very much for your help. I will call upon you repeatedly, I promise. So be prepared for that. Ms. Terry, if you, as your first order of duty, I'd like you to call the roll for our board tonight, please.
Okay, Bema? Present. Curtis? Absent. Deeg?
Here.
Douglas?
Here.
Helmut?
Yes.
Johnson? And Pilak? Here.
All right, good. Thank you very much, Terry. I would like to have a motion to excuse the absence of our two missing members. I've received word from both of them. Both Commissioner Curtis and Commissioner Johnson have corresponded with me, letting me know that they would be absent, so their absence are excused. Can I have a motion for that, please?
I'll move to excuse Commissioner Curtis and Johnson. Support.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to excuse the absence of our two commissioners. All those in favor, and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Good. Their absence are excused. All right, I also have before me an agenda, and I think that, first off, my agenda's been replaced, so I don't know if that needs a motion. Does that need a motion because we had a correction that was replaced, or is that done in advance of this meeting, so it's okay?
I would assume, I'm not sure what the correction is.
I think that, I didn't look myself, so I don't know where the correction
I
is.
think you're fine.
I got one that was pretty, let's ignore that and assume that the agenda before you is correct. Mo, do you want to make a motion for your requested change?
I'd like to move 8A, 130 Oakdale, up before 7, right after the special land use.
That would place new business before old business, which I think is very appropriate considering we have a public hearing tonight to talk about special land use
And I'll make
for
a motion.
130 Oakdale, so if you make that
I'll make
motion,
a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting as amended, which is placing item 8A before item 7. All those, and I have second for that motion also, Madam Secretary. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Good, our agenda is amended and approved. All right, so that's done. I would also like to consider a motion to approve the minutes from the previous regular meeting, which was held on October 2nd. That package of information is before you. I hope you've had a chance to review it. If there are any changes, please state so now. Otherwise, I entertain a motion to approve those previous minutes.
Mr. Chair, I do have a correction
Thank you.
on, I don't have the page number, but under Part B, discussion regarding annual action plan,
Yes.
third paragraph, Commissioner Paddock asked Mr. Pape about the village's status in the Nation Historic Trust's Register of Historic Places. That should read the National Park Services Register of Historic Places.
Ms. Leslie, if you'd be kind enough to point me to that again, please, I missed it.
Okay, Part B,
Yes?
third paragraph
Thank you
down,
very much.
first line.
Okay,
I'll repeat it.
thank you.
Commissioner Pilak asked Mr. Pape about the village's status in the Nation Historic Trust's
Yes.
Register of Historic Places. That should read in the National Park Services, all capitalized, Register of Historic Places, all capitalized.
Madam Secretary, can we get that change made into the record, please?
Yes.
Thank you
There's
very
no
much.
other changes, make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
All right, do I hear any other changes to this minutes?
I'll second it.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to approve the minutes from the previous meeting as amended. That will be recorded in the record for you, so you shouldn't have any trouble getting that out and changing the record. Ask your question, please.
Did Pilot second that?
I believe
No,
that
I think
Maureen
Rose
made that motion and Rose seconded it. Okay, that information is also available on the tape recording if you ever have a question. But please feel free to ask questions as we proceed. All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to approve tonight's, the previous minutes from the October 2nd meeting as amended. I have a second for that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Good. Our previous minutes are approved. All right, Madam Secretary, I did not happen to notice whether or not we have any correspondence in this package. Can you refresh my memory, please, and let me know if we received anything that signifies by the correspondence that should be filed?
No, there is no
All
correspondence
right,
for
thank you very much for that. We'll step across number 6 and proceed right to our public hearing, which is item 6A. All right, I would now entertain a motion at approximately 5 minutes after 7 to consider entering our public hearing.
Make a motion to open a public hearing regarding 130 Oakdale for a tasting room at 7:06 p.m.
Do I have a second for that?
Support.
All right, good. Madam Secretary, I have a motion to enter our public hearing at 7:05 p.m. I also have support from that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Good, now we are at a public hearing. At this time, I'd be more than interested to hear comments from anybody in the audience who would like to comment on the consideration of special land use permit for 130 Oakdale for a tasting room. Because we have a large audience tonight, I'd appreciate it if you care to speak. I'm more than happy to have you step up. Please stand at the podium, give me your name and your address, and please keep your comments short if you can, approximately 3 minutes. I don't want to have to silence you, but I do want to hear what you have to say. So please, if someone would like to speak, please step forward. Please. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And if you'd be kind enough to give me your name and your address
for sure.
once you get to the mic. And make sure to address the microphone and talk to me.
I will.
Good.
Hey, I'm Pastor Matt. I live at 81 Beacon Street.
Good.
I've got a church at Holy Cross right here in the village. I'm excited about the prospect and the possibility of another tap room coming to Oxford. I sent them a message kind of encouraging them, saying, hey, we'd love to see you as part of the community. I think it's a great experience to have a pint with a friend and be able to talk about life and faith and all that together. I understand that it's a special use request, so, you know, I read the wisdom of the board and the commission, so, but excited, hope that it's something that you guys see also.
Good. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, Pastor. Thank you very much. Please, sir, if you'd be so kind. Again, if you'd be kind enough to state your name and your address and address your comments to the chair. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Brian Ross, 245 North Broadway, Lake Orion. My wife and I own the land that's immediately abutting that to the east. And it's an industrial property. But I'm just concerned, I don't know exactly too much about this proposal. I understand it's going to be a tasting room for alcohol open to the public. And I noticed, you know, being a neighbor there, that there isn't a lot of parking available, that's for sure. And it does seem to not really, and I agree with the prior speaker. I mean, like a brewery to come to town, tasting room and all that, but I'm not sure that's the appropriate site at all. Seems to be back away from the road, you know, kind of along the alley where you're going to be serving the public alcohol. And at this point, you know, there will be a brewery, there'll be a business established there, but the zoning board, what they rule, lasts forever. You know, if there's a special use, that lasts forever. So if this thing goes belly up in 2 years and some other guy comes in and buys it, it leaves a certain license. And so I'm very concerned about the parking, the type of activity there, off the main street, and you know, in the dark back there along the alley. It doesn't sound completely wholesome to me. And I would suggest that you really investigate that before you allow a special use like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Anyone else, please?
Hi, I'm Margie Russell, 245 North Broadway. I'm just wondering, is there a plan? Is there any drawings, or, I don't know, is it just in that strip, or is it going to be on the other side of Oakdale? There's no plan, so...
I understand that, Ms. Russell, and unfortunately, I'm not allowed to comment during the public hearing. I can listen to your comments, I can listen to your suggestions, or what other concerns you have, but I'm not able to address that publicly at this point right now. Now, immediately following our public hearing, we'll enter that's basically new business where we will discuss this, and if you care to stay, you're welcome to, and perhaps we can get some of those questions answered.
The other thing too is that our property, that abuts that property, there's these yellow, I don't know what they are, like trail markers that are on our property and part on the other person's property, and the property line is right in the middle of that, just to make it clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Please, sir. Again, if you'll please state your name and your address.
My name is Charles Hubbard. I'm with MD Hubbard Spring Company. We're at 595 South Lapeer Road. We are the property just to the west of this property on Oakdale. I just learned that apparently if the special land use goes through, that it stays with the property forever. We object to this becoming a tap room, or whatever people want to call it, lounge or bar or whatever. The area back there is on a dead-end street. The dead-end street is just a little alleyway. We don't wish to have people, we run a single shift operation, and we don't care to have people trespassing on us in the evenings or whenever. We don't wish to have people parking on us whenever, nor do we wish to have any kind of vandalisms when people have had a little bit too much. We don't care to have people exploring around, seeing what's around the neighborhood when they've had a little too much or just nothing to do instead of going home. We don't care to have break-ins. There's very little lighting back there. There's very little parking back there. It's a dead-end alley, basically. It's a little dirt road that is very wide. There's no parking along it. People have tried to, and we're using the little garage closer to M24. They tried to park cars along there, and they haven't been very successful. I don't watch the street very often, but I've never seen any village police back in there. In fact, the village police have to go outside the village to get to that property. And it's just not a good place for this activity. Normally, these kinds of places are in well-lit, like downtown. They're not on out of the way, what would you call it, poor places to have such an establishment. So we have a great deal to having it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments very much. Anyone else, please?
May I make another comment?
If you please, I'll get to you next. And again, please give me your name and your address.
Yeah, Brian Russell again, 45 North Broadway, Lake Orion. And I should put out that my wife and I own the property at 575 South Glasgow, which is directly behind this establishment. And I was on the zoning board of appeals for the Village of Lake Orion for 5 years and served as chairman, so I have some idea about legality and what this is. Right now, there's a special use, as I understand it, request from the Board of Zoning Appeals to take a look at this. And usually for this, there has to be some evidence of hardship in some way that the law just isn't right in this particular case. And then you have the authority, which is quasi-judicial, to go outside the law a little bit and make a special use in a special case. And I am objecting to it based on many of the comments that my industrial neighbor just made. We have a large parking lot that's just right behind this place. This building was originally the railroad tracks, as I understand it. And in 1994, the zoning board gave them a variance to build closer than the 20 feet to the lot line that's required in an industrial area. So the building that's there, while it's still very narrow, is actually wider than the law allows for, and it's granted an exception, which can never be removed. And it will be the same if we start serving alcohol. And I would point out that Oakdale Street is just a gravel dirt thing that is more of a driveway than any kind of road. There's never any general traffic on it. And again, I would just caution the board, from my experience, that to do an activity that involves the consumption of alcohol in kind of a back alley sort of situation, when we have a nice town with other places available, doesn't make sense to me, so I would object. It really isn't well lit. It's not a wholesome place for that sort of thing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate again your comments. Sir, if you'd like to step up.
My name is Steve Prane, 2890 KC. I grew up here in Oxford, been here since 1977. What they want to do is pretty much the new in thing. If you go to places like Hamtramck, they have industrial areas where they have feather bowling and things like that. It's an industrial area, heavy industrial area, and that pretty much means anything goes. I mean, this is exactly where you'd want to do something like this. If you go right here on 24, you've got so many businesses closing. The cake shop, the antiques, so on and so forth. You should welcome any business that wants to come to this town and pay taxes and thrive. So that's just my opinion. It's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, if nobody's going to go on somebody's property and take advantage of it because it's industrial or not industrial. If somebody's doing something that's wrong, that's what the police are for. You would want nobody in your neighborhood doing something wrong. It happens all the time, right? I mean, that's why we have the law. So my opinion is it's a good thing. It's a business, and let it happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your comments as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're still in a public hearing. If there anyone else who'd like to make a comment, I'm happy to take all the time necessary to do this. Sir, please.
Hi, my name is Ben Schnurl, 5960 Hosmer Road. I'm the one proposing the said Tapperman Brewery to be used in this space. I feel that a reclassification of this building is positive for the township. Again, based on businesses that are struggling, economic developments that have gone awry in the area don't always last within the heart of town, but in the external areas like this industrial use, which again, brewing is an industrial use. So as per the state microbrewing license that we're applying for, which suggests that we have a tap room to allow people to taste our products, the brewing use itself is a suggested use for this building. So our request for a special use to add a tap room is to adhere to the state's advised business outline as per the license. We're a wholesome family. We have a 2-year-old son, Theo, and we want to brew beer for our community in a building that allows us to use the building in a family way. We're a family company. We're going to grow into a family business, and we would love to call Oxford our home. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to make a comment, please? All right, I don't see any other hands rising, and so I will exit.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing at
I'm
7:20.
just going to give you that opportunity. Thank you very much for jumping on that. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so Madam Secretary, at 20 minutes after 7, I have a motion to exit from public hearing, and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
As long as there are no other comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye now.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we are now exiting public hearing. Now, we can now enter item 8A, which is new business, special consideration of a special land use permit for 130 Oakdale for a tasting room. And so this is the time when you get to hear testimony in regards to this. Mario, before you start, I know you have prepared a presentation for me, but I've got a number of questions for you. Thank you, Joe, I appreciate that. That's okay, thank you very much. One of the great advantages we have in being able to conduct our work here is we have the expert advice of our village planner, who's a professional in this area and knows all the things that we don't know. In particular, he knows the law as it pertains to the jurisdiction of property in the community. And so we depend upon Mario a great deal to be able to provide us what is fact from fiction and the truth. And so Mario, I'm going to count on you for that tonight, and I appreciate your help very much. First off, I want to just do a little bit of background, Mario. I want you to explain to me why, in particular, a special land use permit is required for this property.
Yes. Okay. So, yes, and that would definitely be the reason we're here this evening. The site, generally speaking, there are zoning districts throughout the village that indicate which uses go in which location. For each district, there are two lists. One is a list of principal permitted uses. Those are uses that a landowner can operate by right. So long as they meet other code and ordinance requirements, they can operate those type of uses as permitted by right because they own property in that district. The second list is for special land use requirements. There are some uses we feel should be allowed to operate in certain districts if they meet certain requirements. The village zoning ordinance has a list of those various lists of uses, and it also has standards. So for each use that has a special land use requirement, there are standards that must be met in order for them to adhere to that. And point of fact, there are at least a minimum of 10 standards that have to be reviewed and considered by the Planning Commission prior to granting or considering granting a special land use approval.
All right, thank you very much. So in order to consider placing a tap room, for lack of a better word, in this property, a special land use permit would be required?
Yes, that's correct.
And so is it true that a special land use permit is attached to the property?
That is correct as well.
And is it true that that special land use property, or that special land use permit would exist in perpetuity?
Generally, yes, they do exist in perpetuity and runs with the land. There are certain cases which they can be revoked, but generally, if the operation of the site were to not adhere to all the requirements of their approval. So granted, if you were to grant approval tonight to the special land use and to the site plan that's of the site, they have to operate it under those auspices, and if they don't, then there's a procedure which in theory the Planning Commission could have the special land use revoked.
I see. So the special land use permit must be attached to the property. It cannot be attached to the business owner and or the business.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct. All right. Did you prepare remarks for us this evening in regards to this issue?
Yes, I did.
If you'd be kind enough to take over, and I'd be happy to hear what you have to say.
As I mentioned, we had conducted a review of this application based on the zoning ordinance standards outlined in village zoning ordinance. We prepared a review letter for the planning commission members. It's dated October 11th, 2018, and I'll be going over that. We're here tonight to consider an application from One Drop Brewing Company to operate a brewery with a tasting room at 130 Oakdale Street. This is located on the east side of South Lapeer Road, or M24, at the end of Oakdale Street. The property itself is actually 50 feet in width 50 feet in depth by 1,110 feet in width. So it is a long, narrow strip that I do believe was the railroad back in the day. And while the site is located within the village of Oxford, we just note that this is on our westernmost boundary. To the west of the site, technically that is Oxford Charter Township. To the east, north, and south of the site is Village of Oxford property, or property located there. And the site itself is actually zoned I-1, or industrial. That's the industrial zoning district. So the applicant is proposing to reuse an existing one-story structure with approximately 25 feet by 150 feet for the primary principal use of a brewery. Brewery, the production and creation of beer is permitted by right in the RI1 district. However, the tasting room classification does require the special land use approval. So as I mentioned, that's the reason we're here. So when it comes to special land use approvals in the village, section 9.2.5 identifies 10 different categories in which we must take a look at the use to see if it would be appropriate in this particular location. And the first of that is whether this use is compatible with adjacent uses and zoning of land. It's surrounded by commercial zoning in the township. It's surrounded by industrial zoning in the village. And the existing uses are of a commercial nature. There's no residential area use or zoning in close proximity to this property. So based on the level of activity, that's similar to other land, and so therefore it would be compatible. We also have to make sure that there would not be any adverse impacts to surrounding land uses based on how the land would be operated. Given the fact it would be operated in an industrial nature for the majority of it, and then the tasting room itself is a smaller square footage of the building, and it's ancillary and is intended to supplement the brewery. The applicant has indicated that the primary purpose is going to be the production of beer, and the tasting room is mainly there for people to come sample the product. So therefore, it's not intended to be totally in operation. All the square footage isn't going to be utilized for a tasting room. A percentage of that is going to be utilized for the tasting room. So it's a supplement to there, and so therefore it's that impact is minimal comparative to the other use of the property, which is industrial, and the adjacent properties are operated in an industrial nature as well, in addition to a commercial nature for those properties fronting on South Lapeer. So we don't believe there are any adverse impact as well, because the activities will be conducted in the interior of the building. The exterior of the building is not identified for any kind of production, any kind of storage, anything outside the building is not intended to be conducted. So we don't believe there will be any adverse impact. We have to make sure that this proposal is in compliance with and in accordance with our village master plan. The village master plan does indicate that this area is intended for industrial uses. So therefore, in keeping with the industrial use, it's compatible with the master plan. We have to indicate whether the need for the proposed use exists in the community. As mentioned, we feel that because the tasting room is supplementary in a small percentage of the building, and it's advantageous and will be beneficial to the community to have another industrial user that will provide some jobs and provide an occupied or vacant building. There is currently no business operating in the building currently. So to have an occupied building that's creating jobs, it's advantageous and it's I would say it's a need of the village. And so having a tasting room to supplement that will ensure the economic sustainability of it, so therefore it's additional need. Another criteria is whether this is designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to ensure long-term compatibility with surrounding land uses. As I mentioned, generally speaking, the site is going to be operated completely in the interior of the building, so it's not going to have a lot of any adverse impacts. However, and then in addition to that, the applicant does have to receive site plan approval. So we believe as long as the applicant receives site plan approval, making sure that the site is operated appropriately, then it would be compatible with the operation and maintenance of the site. Another criteria is the location of the proposed special land use will minimize the impact of the traffic generated by the proposed use. The site is located on a small road, however, that road has direct access to M24, which is the primary principal arterial, meaning the heavily traversed and highest capacity area anyway for the village. So therefore, by it generating, the number of trips it's going to generate, and then the fact that it's going to be accessing directly to M24, it's not going to access any residential streets, it's not going to access any smaller streets, it's going to go directly to M24. The traffic generated is in that location will be appropriate. Whether this use is consistent with existing or future capabilities of public service and facilities affected by the proposed use, we would defer to the village engineer to ensure that all of the infrastructure in place will meet the needs of the proposed use. We do know that's being reviewed as well. And generally speaking, speaking with the applicant, they've indicated there is no need to increase the size of any water taps or sewer taps or anything to that nature. The electrical needs of it are not going to be excessive at all. It's going to be exactly as operated in the past. So therefore, the public service and the utilities can meet this use. 8, whether this would, we have to make sure that there's not any detrimental impact to the public health, safety, and welfare by making sure there isn't any excessive noise, fumes, glare, flashing lights, even that's what it's listed in the ordinance. And once again, getting a little repetitive, but the fact that it's a use in the interior of the building, there's not going to be any new lighting proposed of any kind of flashing lights or nature, plus the fact that the sign ordinance for the village would prohibit the use of any type of excessive lighting, control that, and the fact that, once again, it's connected to the interior of the building. We feel that that makes it compatible and won't have adverse impacts. Specific criteria in our special land use review criteria is to make sure that the location of the use will not result in a small residential area being surrounded by a non-residential activity. So this is an extra layer of protection that we've built into the ordinance to make sure that we're not isolating any existing village residents. And in this case, as mentioned, the location of in an industrial area, commercial area, there are no residents adjacent, so therefore we would not be creating any kind of isolated residents in the village. And finally, the proposed use shall be compatible with the natural environment and conserve natural resources and energy. By the fact that the applicant is reusing an existing structure, they're not proposing to build a new one that saves on energy, and it's a reuse of a property, so therefore it's in keeping with that standard. So with that in mind, with going over those 10 criteria, we would advise the Planning Commission to grant special land use approval contingent upon the applicant receiving and adhering to site plan approval.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few questions.
Yes.
Has the site plan been created that you're aware of?
Yes.
How many parking spaces have been provided? in this plan?
22, I believe. Yes, 22 spaces will be provided. There are some existing spaces on site, and then additional parking spaces are going to be constructed. For a total of 22.
Because the site plan has at least been initiated, if not completed, does the site plan call for any additional lighting to be added to the property to provide for visibility and security?
To the best of my knowledge, as proposed, the applicant hasn't provided any additional details on the lighting. There are existing currently wall packs or lighting above the existing doors. Beyond that, there is no additional lighting proposed.
All right, has the applicant addressed any of the security concerns that were addressed here, or at least brought forth tonight?
No, but that's not something that's usually part of site
I
plan.
wouldn't think so, but I was just wondering if maybe they might have addressed that in a forward-thinking type of way, because obviously that's something that has been addressed here this evening. Now, just to be clear, this is not a bar.
Correct. Well,
Is that correct? I mean, I don't...
technically, check to make sure there's a...
Well, let me ask you this, Mario. All of they're going to serve here is beer that is produced on site. They're not going to serve liquor? No vodka, no gin, no rum, no nothing like that. It's all just the product that they produce. And the idea is that this is a room for people to come and sample for a fee the product that they produce, and not necessarily a place to come hang out for 3 hours and drink to excess. Are there drink limits that are imposed upon their customers?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no, because they just received a license from the LARA, Alcohol Control Commission.
Sure.
So they would be the ones that regulate that. I mean, it's in, just like any establishment that provides alcohol, the owners use their best judgment to ensure that no one drinks to excess. But unfortunately, no, they can't.
All right, so they then ask for and receive a beer and wine license from the state, is that correct? Is that how that works?
That, they would have to receive it prior to beginning operation.
All right, so and you happen to know, is there any plan to serve wine here in addition, or to produce wine at this location?
We can confirm with the applicant, but to the best of my knowledge, no. The total intent is just for sampling the product produced on the site.
All right, I don't want to pontificate, but just a second, though, I'm not done yet. I've been sitting in the chair in this commission for a little bit over 2 years now, and in all of my time on this commission, this is the most people I've ever had in this room at one time. And I have to suppose that y'all didn't come to hear me talk about our reviewing outdoor sales, maybe some of you did, and you didn't come to listen to me talk about creating an annual action plan for this commission to keep us moving forward and doing great things for our community. So my guess is, y'all came to hear us talk about the Oakdale tasting room tonight. That amount of community attendance is very moving to me. And I gave you all an opportunity to come up here and talk because I wanted to hear what everybody had to say, but y'all didn't take advantage of that. And so that's okay, and you're not required to. But, I'm led to believe that this is a somewhat contentious issue. And
A lot of us here is support.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that, because I did hear that as well. And I heard a lot of good, I heard a lot of good arguments on both sides that I found were compelling. And so my mind is not made up, and so I don't want you to think that I'm obviously against this, because I'm not necessarily against this. What I did hear was some concerns that that I have to take in part, and kind of speaking off the record, if you'll let me. As a business owner, I would want to hear those kind of concerns from the community, and to be a good business owner and a good neighbor, to kind of address those the best I could. That's why I tried to ask some of the questions I did, because I want to know, are issues like security and lighting and things like that being addressed? Is there enough parking to make sure that it doesn't become a choke point? Or, if I was going to run a business in any town, I'd want to make sure that I'm the very best neighbor I could be, to make sure that I forestall any concerns that people in the neighborhood have. I have to take those things into consideration. And I ask my fellow commissioners to take those things into consideration as well when we consider something like this, because I don't want to run roughshod over a community, but I also want to create opportunity for people who have the wherewithal to come forward and create something really wonderful for a community. But a lot of responsibility goes with that as well, and I want you to be aware of that, if you will, please. Fellow commissioners, please. Maureen?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may, through the chair. Just to let you know, in terms of also a point of our business tonight, and forgive me for not pointing this out earlier during your agenda issue, because Technically, we are doing a special land use review, but we're also doing a site plan review and approval. It's two items that are separated. So that's why the review that I just went over is for the special land use criteria. Those 10, so the first is for that. So while definitely, and it's very hard, I understand, even, for me, even as a professional, to try and make that distinction, but the special land use approval is regarding those 10, making sure that those 10 criteria meet, or you believe the use will meet that criteria to your satisfaction and to the ordinance's standards. And then separately, site plan issues can be addressed. That's why my recommendation was for, if you were to grant approval of the special land use, it would be contingent upon all the site plan issues getting addressed. And then, once the site plan special use is done, then we can talk about site plan specifics. And they are necessary. I've prepared a separate letter for site plan specifics. And so that would be the time to get into those. But obviously, there's overlap in those, so I understand the need to consider those in your discussion. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate the clarification, Maureen. Maureen, please.
Mario, I just want to clarify something, but make sure we're on, which I'm sure. I'll make sure. The breweries and allowed use, the special land use is for the tasting room, correct?
Correct.
And could any approval be contingent that the tasting room remain an accessory use to the main use of the building? Which is the brewery? So that they can't close and Joe Bob Honky Tonk move in because it's not an accessory? It would have to be accessory to the main principal use?
Technically, I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to make that representation. But in my experience, the way you ensure that this is operates as proposed, if you were to create a motion of granting approval, you would grant approval for the special land use of a tasting room that is supplemental to a larger area being utilized for a brewery. If you would put that specifically in your motion, and then it's not being operated in that way, then they can't operate that way.
And then my other question, I'm sorry, I think might be more site plan, because this was actually a larger site.
Right.
And there's two buildings on it.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that parking that's on this plan, part of this parking isn't for the other building, that these parking spaces are going to be for this building.
Right. So that would be the case, and if the southern building that is on the same piece of property does want to come in, they would have to make sure they meet all of their ordinance requirements, and and I believe that building is vacant as well, so if a new use came into that one, whatever the use is, we have standards to calculate the number they need. And if that number isn't met, then they're going to have to provide that through additional construction.
So it is all on one piece of property?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yeah, it's a multi-tenant site.
Thank you.
Ms. Leslie?
I have a couple questions. You talked about the amount of space devoted to the tasting room. I'm not sure if I missed it. Do you know the percentage, the proportion?
Well, looking at the site plan and based on, it's not delineated specifically, but based on the illustration, it looks like, forgive me, I have that in front of me.
It's approximately 30%, if not more.
Yeah, the total square footage of the building is 3,750. There is a 500 square foot office, and then by my estimation, they want to utilize at a minimum 2,000 square feet for the brewery itself, the brewery operations. So then you're looking at about a 1,250 square foot tasting room.
So, as a follow-up to that for clarification, should a special land use permit be approved, would that designate the amount of space or the portion of the building that is permitted for that use in the permitted use?
Generally, it doesn't get into those specifics because you reference the site plan. If you reference the site plan and then that size is on the site plan, and if you request as part of your site plan review that they put a square footage of the brewery, then that's what it would be.
And the same thing with operational questions such as hours of operation and whatnot. And another question I have is, who is responsible for maintaining or improving Oakdale Street?
I would think that's actually a township road. I don't know that for sure, but given that it's located in the township, yeah, Joe's indicated to me that yes, that is a township road. So they are responsible.
Thank you.
Rose, is there anything you want to talk about?
No, you guys all answered my questions before I got the chance to ask them.
Commissioner D,
No, good.
any questions you might have?
Well, I will ask.
Yeah, good, thank you, please.
The fire department has indicated they want a fire lane. Would that be addressed underneath the site plan or underneath this use?
Site.
Okay. I'll hold it off for that.
No, go ahead, please.
Did we get a letter from the DPW director? I don't see one.
Not at this point, yeah.
Please. Please keep your comments short and sweet.
Contract is so short of the only, because the only question I had was on the license they're getting.
Please state your name and address, please.
Chuck Snyder, 2681 Hadley Road, Lapeer.
Thank you.
Question was on the license they're getting from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. If this in fact is a beer and wine license, that's monitored and controlled by the Liquor Control Commission, not by you. They have a beer and wine license, they can do beer and wine.
Yes, I understand that, Mr. Schneider, and that's why I asked. I just wasn't exactly sure what license they had to have in order to be able to serve it.
They do whatever they want once they get that license. Second thing is, you got 22 parking spaces on the employees we're talking about, because they're gonna park, since this is kind of isolated, and these gentlemen are concerned about people parking on their adjacent property. How many spaces are they actually gonna have for consumers, for the public?
All right, thank you. Mario, I'm struggling with the special land use permit. I recognize that it's the law, but I want a better way to do this. You know, I would like to have a permit like this be able to be attached to a business as opposed to a property.
Yeah.
Do I have any other options to
No,
make this
because-
happen? This is the only way that we can do this.
When you think about it, I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion the fact that there are certain principal permitted rights of a landowner based on their zoning use. So those businesses, they have a right to conduct the business in accordance with the zoning ordinance. And so if someone has a use and then they want to come in, and as long as they meet all the criteria, some businesses can operate through a change of use form and just begin operating, and we have no say over it because we already have had our say by creating the zoning ordinance. And so there's a possibility that back when the zoning ordinance was created, they could have made this tap room as part of a brewery, a permitted use, and they could have operated it without any kind of additional review criteria beyond the regular site plan. So when it comes to special use, it does tend to run with the land, but it's that extra layer of questions that the applicant has to go through in order to determine if it's appropriate in that location. And you do have to make a decision to see if it would be appropriate for the foreseeable future, for running with the land, I should say.
Please, if you step forward. Once again, give me your name and address, please, and the microphone.
My name is Ken Mathias. My address 5465 Osborne Road, live in Oxford. These buildings are my buildings. I own them for many years, and they've been vacant for a lot of that time. We've used them for storage and other business uses. I have a fairly large business in Lake Orion. That's my daughter that's gonna run this business, and my son-in-law. And we're just trying to get this brewery off the ground. The intended thing was to start a brewery for them, and then if it took off, to find another location to open an actual, as you would call it, bar, right? And then to make this into a production brewery so that we could produce product to supplement the other location. The reason for the tasting room was just to get the product out there. To get people to be able to try it so that we could either do canning or we could do bottling out of that facility or kegging. But that's the intent for the tap room, to make the business flourish. The fellows that are right to the adjacent part of our property, we've seen them build additions, do parking lots, do all the things they do to expand their business. We're trying to use this building for a purpose, rather than just sell it and let somebody let it go to pot back there, because it's been run down. If there's need for additional lighting or things that we need to do, I'm happy to support that. It's not a problem for me. We've done a lot of renovations to the building. If you all need additional lighting, that's not a problem, I'll add that. We've worked with Mario to get an architectural engineer to put together what was needed for the building, and parking spaces and all that. But if there's additional things you all want, I'm a neighbor. I live here in Oxford. I want the facility to be a positive attribute to the community, not a negative. So whatever you all think we need to do, we plan on putting a flagpole out back there to make it look nice. It has been a mess back there. The guy that was doing car repairs and stuff, and parking all kinds of junk cars back there, we've seen that as well, and it's been frustrating for us because we own those buildings. So we want to upgrade the area, we want to upgrade the facility. We're not trying to, have people stumbling into neighbors' properties. That's not the intent of this. It's the intent to run an upstanding operation and to be good neighbors, as you mentioned. That's our intention.
I appreciate your passion, Ken. That's exactly what I wanted.
And if it doesn't go, I don't care about the use. I own the buildings, I'm not going to sell it to Joe Bob's bar.
Hey, I don't mind about
But that's not the intention.
How many employees are you considering to have, Ken?
4 at the most. And we have parking additional for them on the other side of the building. It's not counted in these 22
I
spaces.
understand. Thank you very much. I appreciate your clarification on that. Maureen, please don't go yet, Ken.
Please say, Mario, I have a question. The site plan's not on the agenda.
It is not, Mario, and that's what I see also. I'm concerned that the only thing we have under new business is a special land use consideration.
True. Technically,
I didn't realize you were going to present the site plan tonight also.
I believe it was the applicant's intent to try and get that today as well.
We were happy to do that. We presented it, we prepared it so that you could review it. Obviously, I have no control over the agenda from that perspective, but we were happy to present that tonight for your review.
Maureen, I don't believe I can make a change like that on the fly unless tell me I can.
I don't believe you can either, but I'm trying to work with it. I'd like to discuss the site plan as part of the special land use.
Do that.
And come back at the next meeting, and set it aside to the next meeting, but I'd like to discuss it. Again, I have some questions while you're standing here.
Sure, Ken, I apologize, that's an administrative snafu, but I'm bound by certain aspects of the law that I have to follow. And so I apologize for the inconvenience, but I promise if you'll come back, we'll be happy to talk about it again.
I'd be happy to. One other thing I would like to mention, though, is my business, part of my business is building breweries. I built Falling Down, I built a lot of microbreweries around the area. That's what we do, and this is going to be another use for this facility for my business in Lake Orion, to bring customers that are buying breweries to the facility to run the brewery and see how it operates, so we can sell more equipment at our facility in Lake Orion. So there's multiple uses in that regard, but the tap room is just to get the product in the consumer's hands so that they buy a growler, see it in a grocery store, buy a 6-pack, whatever that they, and it allow us to grow it in the future. We can't grow more than the 22 spaces that we have back there. We can't grow a huge tap room and a big bar back there. It's not possible. We would definitely move to another location when we got to that type of occupancy. That's the whole thing.
I have one question for you, Ken.
Yeah.
Why didn't you come speak when I had a public hearing?
Honestly, I didn't know what this is all about. I'd never gone for a special land use for my buildings, and, again, I've been out there for 15 years at that facility. We've owned it for that long. The prior owner didn't have any tenants in there. And I didn't know that we would get opposition. I thought it would be a positive thing for the community, to be honest with you. I didn't think it would be any negative.
Well, and of course, you know, you can almost expect that all the time, because
Sure.
that's just
I
that's the
understand their
nature- that's the
concerns.
nature of the community. People are concerned about what's going on
I
around them.
understand.
And this is actually why we hold a forum like this, so people can come together and, one, address their concerns, and two, hear that this property is being administered by some, and I want to say a responsible adult, but that's not what I mean, really. The owners are responsible, and they understand, and they have a desire to be a good neighbor, and they're gonna do everything they can to be good members of the community, and I think that's what people want to hear. It's not necessarily opposition per se, I hope, but it's just, they have concerns. If I had something going in next to me, I'd want to know what it
I
was.
understand. I have 300 people down at my facilities on Inwood Road and on Clarkson Road. I've done a lot of improvements to those buildings. I'm a good neighbor down there. I live in Oxford, I'm a good neighbor there. And my grandson at 2 years old, we're going to make sure this thing is an upstanding facility. We're not in it to make people's life miserable. That's not what we're doing.
Appreciate that. Commissioners, questions for Ken, please?
No, we can't look at the site tonight, but because the parking's down here, I'll ask the question. You own both buildings?
Yes.
And the southern building's vacant?
Yes.
But this would use all the parking space, I think there's 4 behind that building also?
To the south, yes.
To the south.
Yes.
As a property owner, you're okay with them using all the parking spaces?
100%. I use it for record storage.
Please, Rose.
And as well, she's asking about parking. That front, there will be no parking across the front of the building, that will be a designated fire lane.
That's correct, yes. We've left that wide open in the second.
All right, any other questions? Ken, thank you very much. You can take a seat if you're done. And ma'am, if you'd like to...
Yeah, just had a couple things, comments.
Yeah, I'll get
Margie Russell, 575 South Glasgow, Lake County Building. I love the idea of brewery, and I am not against that. It's the tasting room and the fact that there was not enough parking there. And I think that, I don't know if you're aware of the property line, that there isn't any room for parking on the east side of that building. So.
Agreed.
Okay. I'm just wondering why you don't just brew the beer there and then sell it at other facilities. And I don't understand exactly like the or room for all that. It doesn't seem possible that we could run that kind of an operation on that structure and have, a place for people. If it does become popular, where are they going to park? There's just no parking. So that's the main concern. I'm sure that's the main concern about the businesses that are right there. I mean, you could put a fence up on the property line and fence it off to keep people from parking in the other parking as another possibility too, so that it's, we're also going to be, we are looking at expanding actually some parking on the back side of that building, of our building, which is right up against yours. So, we don't want to use that for our employees and have you guys fill it up with your guests. So I think that's the biggest concern.
You had your hand up first, I'll come to you, Pastor. Hold on.
I was up before she was.
I'll get to you all. This is my issue.
Thanks, Steve.
Again, Ben Sherrill, 5960 Oscar. To address a few things, since we started this project, it's been about a year and 4 months that we've been considering this building and considering this business plan that we've been devising. And during that time, we've had a lot of time to observe our neighbors and observe the area, observe Hubbard Spring and the adjacent businesses. And from what we've observed, both of those businesses readily and on a daily basis cross the lines of our property. Their employees cross our property to get beverages at the local convenience market across the street. And in Hubbard Springs, our parking lot is used for all of his most predominant phone calls and business meetings. He paces our parking lot. And, being a good neighbor that wanted to open a community-based business, we're happy to have those people pass through our property. We didn't put up those tall fences because those people would no longer be able to go to the convenience mart and walk through our property. So we wanted to keep it a good flow of the people that work in that area to be able to do so, and to be good neighbors. To address the lighting issue, our site plan, we wanted to present a project-based paper that we wrote about our idea. We plan to submit a more detailed project plan. Our exterior lighting, as well as some of the other updates, all of our interior lighting, we've switched to high-intensity LED. Our exterior lighting will be high-intensity LED, illuminating all parking areas. It'll be brighter back there during our hours. Again, we're adding a flagpole that will be visible straight down Oakdale. So the first thing you'll see will be our new sign to code, as well as our flagpole. So we intend to ignite the area with lighting, and not in any way have a late night overconsumption crowd. Being that our intended use is manufacture, we have a lot more on the liability assessment riding than the average Class C liquor license that's just serving beer.
Why is that then?
Because of our manufacturing status there, any and all LARA citations would result in an immediate pull of our license. And that license is to produce 60,000 barrels of beer annually, which is a pretty sizable amount of beer. Our system could not produce a quarter of what we're allowed it to produce. So to get our foot in the door and to keep this micro craft culture alive, which we're seeing invigorate the economies of many area Michigan towns and bring a lot of tax base in, we really want to start small. We have the opportunity to go with much larger systems and a much larger building and other things, but we first want to really prove ourselves in the market and make sure people like our product before we go in on an investment of that magnitude. So
I understand.
we're very happy to address our neighbors' concerns. And another thing to consider is occupancy. The intended occupancy of our tap room based on fire standards, means of egress. My father's a fire chief in Ithaca, New York, so I keep these things in mind. Being that our building doesn't have fire suppression, we have no intention of seeking an occupancy over 100 persons. Based on our parking, we're looking more for 40 to 60 persons, which we don't believe is a crowd that will have any sort of impact on the local area as far as parking goes. At the point that is the case, we'll be ready to move our business on and continue expanding. So we feel that addresses some of these problems and the sheer number of people that will visit our business.
Ben, are you planning on serving any food here?
No, we are not. We really intend to bring our beer to market. We don't even have plans to can or bottle until our business can support it through a lease or mobile packing unit, which can pull up to the brewery and can off our beer. So our size of our system is not even considered micro, it's considered nano. So at 3.5 barrels, we can only produce 100 gallons of beer per brew, and our systems and the amount that we can hold only allows us to brew 5 days out of a month. So our initial production is so small that it's very community based, and we're trying to fill a niche, and we're filling a space that is being left in the community, having a brewery leaving the community just this week. So we're happy to step in and fill that.
What's the name of your company?
One Drop Brewing Company, because it starts with very small volume procedure. So
All right, good. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. Pastor,
Yes, thank you.
come on up here, buddy.
I'm one of the riffraff, so.
All right, riff away.
I
Please step to the microphone,
Hey.
give your name and your address,
Pastor
and
Matt.
address your comments to the
Pastor
chair.
Matt, 81 Dayton Street, here in Oxford. I'm going to speak and run because I actually have a Bible study called Beers and Bibles that meets at the brewery at Homegrown, and it started 5 minutes ago.
Okay, sorry to make you wait.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited. And one of the reasons I'm excited is because they want to do something in our community which would benefit our community. And if we want to see them succeed, in my opinion, we've got to be able to taste what they're selling. And it seems counterintuitive to say, come to Oxford, but then to put our arms behind our back and not allow them to sample. You don't go to a brewery in order to drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. You go to a brewery to have a beer, maybe a flight of beer, and take a growler home. I mean, it's a different kind of culture. It's not a bar-going culture. And so I would, if we're excited about them coming to brew in Oxford, I think a tap room would be the least accommodating we could possibly do, knowing that if they get big, if they expand, that site won't let them. They've got to do something more. And I'd love to see Oxford be a home base for something like that, because I think it'd be a great thing for our community. Tonight we're talking about making that big change at Beers and Bibles. And so a lot of times to make a change like that, you need help from other people. And that's what they're asking you for, is they're asking you for help. Yeah, they're going to brew, probably no matter what, but if they're going to sell what they brew, that's where they need your help. And I believe they're going to be good neighbors. I've never known a brewery that wasn't a good neighbor to the people around them, especially the pastors who host a Bible study called Beers and Bibles. So,
There you go.
have a good night.
Thank you, Pastor. I feel like we should applaud. Very passionate. I appreciate everybody's concern and passion about this issue. Okay, good. Like that, more discussion. Leslie, go ahead and take the floor.
I'm aware that some of the objection in the audience is relating to the question of parking and occupancy. And I wonder if the owner could help those people in the audience understand how you would control or keep the numbers, the occupancy down to a manageable number, like the target number you mentioned. Can you come up and talk a little bit about that?
If I may, if they would allow me, one thing we can do is go over the regulations that exist for the use, and I think that might answer
That might
people's
be
questions.
helpful. Thank you, Marianne.
So with regard, it is a site plan issue, but it is very important. So you see how they always overlap, just as an example. But in this case, when it comes to a structure that has multiple uses, we break it down into its separate components. So we have the brewery use, we have the tasting room, and then we have the office use. When it comes to our ordinance, section 7.1.9 outlines the required number of parking spaces for each type of use. The applicable standards require 1 space per 550 square feet of manufacturing area, which is what the brewery would be. There's 1 space per 350 square feet of office floor area. And then there is 1 space per 3 persons permitted at maximum occupancy for the tasting room / bar use. And looking at the site plan, sheet A100 indicates the brewery occupy, based on my estimates, approximately 2,000 square feet. So then they're based on the 1 space per 550 square foot standard. The brewery requires 4 spaces. So that's 4 spaces for the brewery per our ordinance. The office space is approximately 500 square feet with 1 per 300 square foot of requirement. That means the office requires 1 parking space unto its own. And so, however, the applicant at the time the site plan submitted hasn't provided what is the maximum proposed or permitted occupancy. So what I did in my review is reverse engineered. So if we have 22 spaces being provided, if we take out the 5 spaces, or excuse me, the 4 spaces for the brewery, you take out the 1 space for the office, that leaves them with 17 spaces dedicated to the tasting room. With 17 spaces at 1 space per 300, excuse me, 1 space per 3 permitted at maximum occupancy, that equates to a maximum patrons of the tasting room at 51 people. So my recommendation in the letter is that we recommend a note be added, the building maximum occupancy of the tasting rooms / bar area shall be in compliance with all building and fire codes, but in no case shall exceed more than 51 patrons. So that's actually kind of fortunate because that number backs into the permitted occupancy is suddenly based on spaces provided, not necessarily the other applicable standards. In theory, building code, fire code might permit more based on their square footage dedicated, but just based on parking, it's something we needed to talk to the owners about. But given that they just mentioned they're targeting between 40 and 60 patrons with 51 patrons as the maximum permitted, seems like 51 is a good number, even if it's 40 and 60.
Leslie, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Mo, did you have a question?
No.
All right. Commissioner D?
It's all getting covered along the way.
Commissioner Rose?
No,
All right, I need a wordsmith on this august value to, you have more comments?
No, because we can't do anything about the site plan,
We're not going to address the site plan tonight.
my suggestion would be to set this aside until the October 30th meeting when we can address both these special land use and the site plan together.
is that a problem, Mario?
No, not at all. That makes perfect sense.
Quiet.
Trying to.
Okay.
Would you like that as a motion?
Well, I'm gonna think about it for a second. My concern is that's going to place Commissioner Curtis and Commissioner Johnson at a great disadvantage in their not being here tonight to hear everything that's been spoken. And so we'll be asking them to make a decision on something that they don't have enough information about. And I really don't want to have to repeat all this again.
Well, I think that happens at every meeting.
What do I need, Mario?
Just making point of fact that, given that this is recorded, they could go back and review the public hearing via video.
Yes, I guess that's true, isn't it?
And I know Commissioner Curtis will review the tape without a problem and, get caught up to speed, but I'm in agreement that since the site plan was not on the agenda this time, that they kind of go hand in hand, and we can welcome everybody back again if they want to come back. We don't have to have a public hearing for the site plan, correct?
Correct, that's correct. It would be a standard open to the public planning commission meeting.
Right.
If we were to entertain that, Mario, would we be required to hold an additional public hearing at that meeting then?
No.
To talk, not about the site plan, but to talk about the special land use permit?
No, because the ordinance and state statute only requires one public hearing to hold. So you've held the one public hearing.
All right, thank you. Ms. Leslie, do you have an opinion on this?
I think that waiting until the 30th doesn't seem like it would put undue burden because that's a 2-week period of time on making a decision, but it would help the applicant and perhaps commissioners review the materials to more appropriately address the question. So in my opinion, waiting 2 weeks. Waiting 2 weeks is, I support that.
Commissioner Gary? Maureen, let me have a motion, please.
I have one more quick question.
Go ahead, please. Well, I'll take all night.
Probably for Joe, Medora, Mario.
It's 3 weeks.
Oh,
We have a fifth Monday this month, so it's not 2 weeks from now, it would be 3.
It wouldn't be the
I mean,
30th.
fifth Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
It's not, it's
Oh, you know, then it is going to be 5 weeks. Well,
Because of the election.
the election's in 3 weeks.
on the 6th, yes. We're meeting the first, third, not first, third, fifth.
Good point.
Right, so we won't meet on,
So 30th is not.
don't believe we're meeting on the 5th.
The meeting on the
It's
6th.
6th would be
We
2.
won't meet on the 6th because of the election.
So the 20th.
Or we have a special meeting prior to that.
13th.
Well, that's a board
Yeah,
meeting.
it's a council meeting.
Oh,
So,
Hang on a second.
I don't feel comfortable doing the special land use without the site plan. And I think we're still waiting for information for the site plan, correct?
Things could be on council next week regarding this, the application and stuff.
For the liquor license?
Yeah. And Sam still has a couple things to do for, that they have to make maybe some small changes to for the building.
I'm looking at the calendar, sorry, buddy.
Can I ask a
Rose,
question while
please.
she's looking at? I'm sorry,
Ken.
your name?
Ken Mayfield.
Is that going to fit into your timeline if we table it until,
We're okay with that. If you want to review the site plan from the perspective of lighting and other objections that these fine folks had, we're happy to accommodate and happy to wait.
I have a quick question for the planning commission. Since we can't meet on the 6th, is anyone available to meet on the 30th?
This month?
So there would be in 2 weeks, a special meeting, and then we'd skip the meeting on the 6th because of the election. And then we could skip the meeting on the 20th for Thanksgiving, which is 2 days after that.
Joe, are we allowed to do that?
You can schedule a special meeting at a time. I mean, you know, typically commissions do it before or after their regular meeting. So you do it on Monday the 5th, Wednesday the 7th.
We could do it on Tuesday the 30th. though.
Is it feasible that we could consider both those issues on that evening?
Oh, yeah.
Site plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
and I'll be available?
Ms. Leslie, Maureen?
I have no life.
I understand. Commissioner Dean? Would you be available on the 30th?
I'll have to take an earlier flight.
No. If you can. Okay, if you can. If you can't, I certainly understand. Just let me know.
It's just a suggestion.
All right, give me a motion then. Because I want to
I'll make
table,
a motion.
I want to table this, so I want a motion to do
I'll
it.
make a motion to set this aside until the next regular planning commission, until the next
Special.
to the next planning commission meeting, along, so that we can review it along with the site plan.
Date.
Yeah, I want you
No,
to,
in case for some reason we can't come up with a date, I don't want to put a date on there. If something happens, it can't be on 30th, I don't want that in the motion.
all right, do I have a second?
I support.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to table this issue until our next available commission meeting, and I have support for that. I'd like to have a roll call for the approval or disapproval of this motion.
Okay, Deeg,
Yes.
Curtis, absent, Thema,
Yes.
Helmut,
Yes.
Johnson, absent, Pilak,
Yes.
sorry Leslie, Douglas.
Yes. All right, that motion carries. All right, we will table that until our next available meeting then, and so we will not consider we will not consider special land use permit tonight. And at the next available meeting, we will look at both the special land use permit and the site plan for the 130 Oakdale for a tasting room. Madam Secretary, if you'd be kind enough to make sure the agenda for that reflects both those items, be considered separately, I'd be very grateful. And if we could limit the contents of that meeting to just those two items, that would be splendid. If I can say such a thing. All right. I want to thank everybody here for coming and expressing their opinions and participating in how wonderful democracy can be. I love it when people come out. I wish that every meeting was this robust. It's not often, but I sure appreciate it. And I want you to know that from a chair, I take a great deal of consideration to everything that's said here tonight. And I always long for community input, because otherwise, if you don't attend, we're left our own devices. It's better to have you come. So thank you very much.
Will you notify everyone of when the meeting will be? You send letters out again, or how are we going to?
Joe, I don't know how we do that.
We don't do letters, that was required for public hearing.
Yes, and so no letter this time. Thank you, Joe. Please address that.
It'll be on, we post it out here, we'll put it on the website.
Okay. Also, will the site plan be available to be reviewed by the public?
Yeah, if it's on the time of the meeting, depending on when it's accomplished, completed, we have to get to them, of course, but it might be the day before we have it.
All right, so that completes our new business for this evening. We have 2 open items for old business. I'd like to ask the commission what their pleasure is for whether or not they want to continue, or do we want to table these for discussion at a later time. I know that we have one pressing issue, which is the discussion of reviewing outdoor sales. Do you want to press forward with that? Mario, how much do you have to present on that issue?
Not too much. I was just going to go over the proposed revised language.
What's the commission's pleasure?
I'd like to continue with the outdoor storage because we have the 90-day moratorium that council approved.
I understand.
That's my preference.
All right, let's then proceed ahead with item 7A, which is a discussion regarding village council recommendation to review the outdoor sales ordinance. And Mario, if you would take it away, please.
Yes. As part of your packets, I provided some additional revised language for a zoning ordinance amendment to address outdoor sales. And based on our last meeting, we discussed about allowing for outdoor display items to be temporary approval. Well, you would discuss get a special use approval, and discussed that someone can go for a 6-month approval, and then if possible, and then they can have the alternative to have the 6-month addition. And so the ordinance in front of you includes. I still feel that it's important to properly define these different uses. So on page 1, I still propose to amend the definition for open air business, because right now the existing open air business talks about roadside stands and various recreation uses, outdoor display, and it doesn't really keep with what we were trying to do, which was keeping it more simple. So the proposed definition is just that any business is conducted primarily outdoors for greater than, and forgive me, I meant to say not 180 days, but 6 months. So it would be for any business is conducted primarily outdoors for greater than 6 months in a 12-month period. Such a business shall include one or more of the following characteristics. Customer activity was not completely contained within a fully enclosed building, or the storage, display, or sale of some of all goods that is not within a fully enclosed building. So that would mainly mean, a business that is operating outside all the time. And then, but more to address our current concern, have a specific definition for outdoor display sales temporary, which is storage, display, or sale of some or all goods which is not within a fully enclosed building as defined by the building code, and occurs for 6 months or less in a 12-month period. So just to separate those two, because if someone wants to operate a nursery, or someone wants to operate a car dealership, they would be an open-air business, and they would be specific. Whereas the outdoor display sales would be for a business that wishes to take something they have and just display it for either, they can do it, maybe it's just for a week for sale, or maybe it's for 6 months, as some of the recent uses as proposed.
So what definition would be if they went up for 12 months?
Well, more than it'd be an open air business.
But not the whole business is outside. You have a,
Right, yeah, that's true.
so I just,
Yeah, right, no, that's good. That's true. So we could get rid of the word primarily. A business, any business that's conducted out of doors.
because the business might have to be inside and outside.
Right. So it has a component that's out there. So we got rid of primarily as well, because that's in your existing definition. Because that's in just regular text, that's an existing definition. We've got rid of primarily, that would be, yeah. So that's one way to address the definition. So to move on, oh, I'm sorry, well, unless you have other.
No, I'm good.
Do you think that'll address it? Because it's a good point.
I'm just gonna have to keep reading it, I don't know, I'm gonna read it 27 times.
I know, I agree.
And go back.
I read it 27 times as well when I created it. So moving on, the next thing to address would be section 3 the list of uses, as we talked about tonight. There's a list of permitted uses, list of special uses. Technically, even though your current ordinance has the open air business definition, it's not listed in any of your current districts. What you have is the old definition of outdoor sales. So the first correction would be just to eliminate the outdoor sales text and add open air business. So it would be in keeping with our definitions, and it would still be an open air business would still require special use approval in the C2. So then, in addition to that, I propose allowing under the different list of use heading of temporary, special event, and other uses to add outdoor display sales as a temporary use, and then allow that specifically in the C1 transition and in the C2. So those two districts, C2 and C1 transition, is where outdoor display sales could occur. Does that seem good? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then, as we talked about tonight, the list of standards for these type of uses. Currently, section 4.1.23 outlines all your standards for open air businesses.
Good,
So
that's excellent.
So that's the your existing language, A through J. So I propose leaving that the same, leaving that as is, because we've defined open air business specifically, we've put it in specifically special use in C2, and we have our standards. But then I propose, beginning with letter K at the bottom of page 2, to eliminate out of open air business, because that talks about Christmas tree sales and roadside sales. And those are typically more seasonal uses. Those are typically more uses that are, someone probably isn't going to operate, all months out of, Christmas tree sales typically aren't going to be all months out of the year. So I propose eliminating it out of the existing locations and creating a brand new section, section 4.1.28, outdoor display sales temporary. So that begins on page 3. So this is all new text. And so this text would just indicate there's 8 conditions for all general outdoor display sales that would have to meet. Then all the language you already have for Christmas tree sales and roadside stands, it would stay the same. They're just put into this section. So then Christmas tree sales have their standards, roadside stands have their standards, and then, which are about the same, they're just moved. And then paragraph D in page 4, and I'll get back to paragraph A in a minute, because that's going to be my main question to you. But paragraph D is about the administrative extension. So it says, well, as you can read, but to let the audience know, so if the planning commission determines that an application shall be harmonious with adjacent existing uses, and the applicant requests the option for an additional time period as part of the conditions of approval, the planning commission may allow for the applicant to request an extension at the end of the original approval period. Such an extension shall be reviewed and granted by the village manager if, in the village manager's determination, 1, the applicant has operated in keeping with all conditions of approval originally granted by the planning commission, and 2, the continued operation of the temporary use shall not negatively impact existing adjacent land uses. So the whole purpose of this paragraph was to address your direction last meeting, where we had our discussion. We said, all right, if someone wanted to do this and it became successful, you'd want to be able to grant them a period up to 6 months, and then if they wanted, you would let them come in and get another extension of that outdoor sales, but you didn't want to have them to come back to the planning commission every time. So this sets it up so they'd have to go to the village manager, and the village manager has their criteria. They have to make sure they haven't been, operated in what all can do, like still operating at the same level that you requested. And then making sure that nothing negative has been reported, like there's some negative activity that's been reported about this. But then we also put some control on that extension. In that last paragraph, it says, if granted, an administrative extension shall not be for a time period greater than for the time period originally granted by the planning commission. So someone couldn't come in and ask for 6 months from you guys and then ask the village manager for 2 years. The most they could get from the village manager was saying that you granted. So that's in keeping with making sure all your standards are the same. And then finally, it does say at the village manager's discretion, any request for an extension can be forwarded to the planning commission for review and approval. So if someone...
An additional extension?
Yeah, so if the village manager looks at an application, they're thinking, well, I really don't know if this really deserves extension. It gives the village manager an out, rather than and it's good for the applicant too, because it gives them an opportunity to appeal, basically. So the village manager gets an application for extension, and then in their determination, this person, they haven't been operated what I think in good faith, I think I'm going to deny them. So the village manager can just deny them their extension, or they can say, all right, you can go back to the planning commission, you can ask them. So then they have to come back to you and ask for an extension. So gives the village manager the power and the authority to say, all right, I believe that this application is okay, or I don't think this is fine. Or the third option, I don't think it's fine, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to kick it up to the planning commission. So that's what we talked about in terms of, I wanted to give the village manager opportunity, because I don't want to put the village manager between a rock and a hard place, let's put it that way. So that's how operationally it would work. It would be a temporary use approval. That's another thing. We called it temporary use rather than special land use, because I did additional research on the special land use criteria. And right now, what I've been finding is that special land use does run with land into perpetuity. And there are some attorneys that think you can revoke it, and some of them that don't. So I wanted to do a little bit more research on that. So I think you already have temporary use approval standards, and so that's good, because this is what it would be. Because in theory, there could be someone wants to do a Christmas tree stand. We should let them come in, get their approval, and then that's it. They sold it from Halloween or maybe New Year's, Thanksgiving to Christmas, and then that's it, then they're done. Let them operate that way, but give business owners the opportunity, as we've heard expressed, that some business owners want to be able to put out some material to display, keeping with their historic past practice. Let them keep doing it. But they have to come in, apply for a permit, and get a temporary use.
Mario, this is excellent work, and thank you very much for this. I'm certain that we have the authority to be able to create such a thing.
Yes, the temporary use is already in.
Okay, so good, I appreciate that. Just a second, Maureen. You know where I want to go with this. I really like this idea. I think this satisfies everything that we've been asked to do, and is very fair both to the community and to the business owners who want to abide by something like this. Can we do something like this as a land use permit? As a temporary permit? Non-special use?
Well, that
I mean, right now we're considering outdoor display sales, but can we do something like this? I mean, here we just spent an hour talking about one drop request for a special land use permit that some of us are not 100% comfortable with because of the perpetuity issue. But could we draft a regulation like this that dealt with a special temporary something like this? I don't know exactly what it would be, but I think this is fascinating because it gives us the idea to allow somebody to show us how good a job you can do.
Right.
And show us that it'll work like you say it will. And instead, you know, I give somebody basically a carte blanche capability to do whatever they want for all intents and purposes. You know, and then, you know, what choice do I have after that? Because I didn't let the horse out of the barn, right?
Right, exactly.
But I like the idea of being able to say, okay, look, I trust you. I'm not talking about you, Ken, per se. You know, I'm sorry, I keep pointing at you, but, you know, the idea of saying, okay, I trust you to show me that you can do this, and we'll grant you authority to do this, but you have to, I'm going to keep that a little bit tighter leash. You have to demonstrate that you're willing to abide by the regulations. That's kind of an aside. It doesn't really pertain to this, but I do like this idea, because I asked you, are there any options from special use permit? And, you know, at the time you said no, but I kind of wonder, is this something we could consider? It's not going to be ready for these guys, but
No.
you know, in the future, it would be kind of nice to know that we have another tool in our belt, if you will.
Right. So the temporary use is already in your ordinance, and it is already a tool you have. However, the one thing is that the temporary use standards in your ordinance don't get too specific. They kind of go with what would be considered general knowledge of what's a temporary use. Temporary uses typically are intended to be like a carnival, or like, you know, a grand opening sale. Like if someone has, you know, business, and they say, I want to have a special Thanksgiving sale, and I want to use my whole parking lot, and I want to display it, well, then that's temporary. You know, it's going to be around Thanksgiving, and then that's it. So that actually puts a good spin on one thing about this, where I wanted to let you hear your input on, is that, you know, technically, the way it's written right now, someone could come in, get approval 6 months, go get an extension, and then keep getting extensions.
Yeah.
So then that begs the definition, is it really temporary? And so that's one of those ways in which your ordinance doesn't specifically define temporary. We could define temporary, but then it eventually would put a limit on how many extensions they could get. So that's a, you know, philosophical question for you guys, how comfortable you are with right now, if this was amended, it would, I mean, included, you know, someone could get an extension ad infinitum. And so, you know, that's not really it doesn't necessarily, it would be hard to meet the intent of temporary. And so similarly, just go back around to your...
Well, the question is the permit temporary, or is the event temporary?
Right, and in theory,
See, I look at it as the permit is temporary. The event can be permanent, but the permit is what's temporary.
Right.
And it's, you know, as far as from my point of view, as far as I'm concerned, they could come back every year and reapply. Because what it does is, once again, it gives us the ability to yank it if there is a misuse of this. But as long as they're abiding by the tenets of and stipulations of the regulation, every year come in and get a new application. You could have it for as long as you want. It doesn't make any difference to me. It's the permit that's temporary as far as I'm concerned, not the event. And so...
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it. And I think
that's why I would refrain from defining temporary unless I define, from my point of view, define it that way.
And that's why it's not defined in the ordinance. So, yeah, no, that's a very good point. So that's I mean, it's akin to making it more of a license, but not calling it a license, calling it a temporary use, so.
Sure.
And no, that's a good way to look at it, actually.
Maureen, you had a question?
The approval is temporary.
In your chart, under temporary special events and other uses, what does the T stand for?
Yeah, thank you.
That would be just temporary use, and that's one thing we have to define. We have special and permitted, so the T would have to be, there's a little key at the top of your zoning ordinances. T equals, so T is equal to temporary.
But they're all temporary. I mean, I don't understand what temporary has to do with permitted or special. I think it's just, it's fine. You answered my question, that's all I want to know.
But you're right, maybe that's a good point, we have to make sure it's clear what people compare to the other ones, so.
Do you want to know about typos right now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm seeing them
No,
notes
that's fine.
later. I have a couple on page 3, section 4, .1.28, first line, any business that proposes to conduct.
Yep, thank you.
And on page 4, under D, first section, last line, and granted by the village manager. If in the village manager, there's a typo.
Manger.
Mangers. Village
Village Manger. Village Mangler.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Leslie. All right, so Mario, what's your intention tonight? Do you want us to run with this, or would you like to give us a little bit more time to really give some thought to this? I like this effort.
I think it would
done an excellent job.
We have some questions in the audience, I think it'd be good.
Chief, if you'd step up to the podium, please, and state your name and address, and address your comments to the chair, if you'd be so kind.
Pete Schultz, Oxford Fire Chief, and also DDA Chairman, speaking on behalf of both of them tonight, of the concerns that I have. This was on our agenda last night at the DDA meeting. We discussed it rather lengthy. The concern that we all had was that the preference that came out of that group was that we would prefer to have it as a yearly permit that they would have to apply for to go through the process. That way, if there is issues that continue to happen, or they're not keeping the place clean, or they're growing beyond their bounds, or doing more than what really stated at the beginning of next year, it's easy to just say, no, deny, based on your past practices and everything. That way they keep coming back and forth in front of you, as opposed to just saying you're good to go for the next umpteen years, and it just kind of fades away at that point as far as the control over. This way it keeps it in front of everybody's face, so that's why our pretty much preference was that it would stay towards a yearly preference on that.
Okay, go ahead, Chief.
On the fire chief concern of it, I want to make sure on the language that we get changing back and forth here, that it doesn't automatically now allow fireworks sales to be easily to come back into the village. Right now, it's pretty much very tight. It has to go for full site plan review, whatever, and you pretty kind of deny some of the outdoor sales. I don't want to open it up to that point, because you cannot regulate for the state law on fireworks sales. You can't say, we don't want fireworks sales. You can't do that. You have to be able to tell them. But if you can regulate by the point that they have to come in and get a full-blown site plan approval every single year, are you going to allow it under tents, which technically most of them are all under a tent, or do you allow somebody to set up a tent in a parking lot for the next, month and a half or something like that? That's when, something like that, if there's worries of coding it or restrictions wise that you're not going to allow, under a tent setup or something like that for kinds of sales. Again, you can restrict it that way. So I want to be very careful on how you word things, so we don't open ourselves up to. And if our big parking lots in town, all of a sudden I'll get a tent set up every year with fireworks sales in those areas.
All right.
So I'd be very concerned about those.
Of course, and I certainly understand that and respect that as well. Chief, I know that you didn't have the benefit of looking at this document prior to the meeting tonight, I don't believe. Mario, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that what you've documented here does address the chief's and the DDA's first concern.
The first concern, yeah, we're suggesting a 6-month approval.
Or whatever it may be, but the idea of it being a defined period of time, whether it be 6 months, a year, probably a year at the most, but, mostly I don't want to create more work for Joe, and having somebody come back every 6 months to apply for a permit is just a little bit more work than may be necessary, but an annual basis is, I think, a reasonable amount of time for someone to demonstrate whether or not they're capable of acting like an adult. And that's my opinion. So the idea of creating a temporary permit with a duration on it that would have to be renewed then at the end of that cycle was the consideration that was put forth here.
In looking at existing businesses and the way business has been conducted, by doing it as a temporary 6-month or something like that, when a couple of them, it's pretty much year-round where they actually have a display of some of their stuff. I don't agree that they should have to come back every 6 months to be able to put a lawnmower out front of a, or a ATV vehicle or out front of a building or something like that. That they have to come every 6 months to be able to do that as part of their normal sale of what they're selling, kind of a thing. Or the water softener place as far as setting a pallet of salt out there in the daytime while they're in business and they put the salt away back at nighttime. Again, they can easily set the salt out there in January just as easily as they can set it out there in the middle of July. So to me, it seems like it would be an extra work coming back and forth every 6 months or 3 months or 8 months for something like that. I think there needs to be some kind of consensus made. It's either a year for that part of it, or if it's a special thing, I'm doing a flower sale, okay, then I can see giving you 3 months to have a flower sale or something like that. But we got to look at both ends of it.
All right, I understand. Thank you very much, Chief. Hold on a second, Rose, I'm not quite done yet. Mario, I don't recall seeing in here, but I think also something that would be very important in the stipulations presented in this document is that any outdoor display would not impinge upon the fire department's ability to maintain access to a facility. And so, fire lanes obviously must be kept clear, and storage cannot be allowed in any type of access on the property that would logically be considered a fire lane.
Or the triple sketch.
And so that's something I would definitely, because the last thing in the world I want to do is set up a problem where, Chief and his team goes to a house or a building to conduct a fire intervention and they can't get access to the place because people have got junk stored out in the yard, whatever it may be. So I use the term figuratively, I apologize, it's probably not very appropriate, but you know what I mean.
That's what the one, stuff.
No, it's, yeah, I don't, everybody's got their definition of what that kind of thing is, but the second thing is that the chief also brings up a very good point about fireworks sales, and while we can't specifically deny a person's ability to be able to sell fireworks within the village, if I'm correct, Chief, is that you want to make sure that something in this would say that, I want to make sure that the chief's concerns were heard and that they be worded into this in some fashion to make sure that people who are looking at this legislation don't look at it as a workaround or a get around to be able to do something that we're trying to contain.
No, I agree. And to address your concerns, paragraph 8 talks generally about hazardous conditions, but we could shore up that language and make it specifically to making sure that fire access and fire lanes are protected. They also are, in this process, they'd be required to submit a plot plan to show the existing conditions of the site and where the outdoor display area will be. So that'll be another way we can make sure that the fire access lanes and all the others, fire safety review are approved, or don't cause anything dangerous.
Is it reasonable to ask that a plan like that, and it doesn't have to be an official engineering site plan, but it would be nice if we had fire department approval on something like that, just to make sure that that aspect is being addressed in the process. So I'd like to see that as well. Rose, finally.
Oh, no, not finally. There's lots of us with questions. But you go ahead and think you got them all.
I just wanted to make sure that they're not having to come back to the planning commission each time, that the village manager has the ability to grant their approval.
Yes.
And I believe that's the way that the regulation is currently worded. Now, Maureen?
Are we going to talk about setbacks?
Well, that was where I was going to say, I think maybe your general discussion might be about, because in paragraph A, I made some proposals on where and how much space this type of use could occupy. And so that would be, I would think, something you'd want to address, because like paragraph 2 addresses to make sure that any display or sales area shall abide by the clear vision standards. Number 5 says display area shall not be located in the required front yard or side yard. And then the big one is paragraph 4 says the outdoor display area should not exceed more than 50% of the net floor area of the principal structure, or not more than 25% of the lot area. So in theory, that could be a pretty small space. So that was just numbers to put on the page so that you can start that discussion as to how much of a site you will want to prefer to have this occupied. So it's up to you, whether you think those numbers are too big, too little. Because the intent of this, the way this is worded, would be for the fact that, right, we have a user, in theory, they're in their building, and then they want to display things outside. Well, this would say, all right, you can, but you're not going to be displaying things greater than what you're already displaying inside. Because that goes back on the idea that this is a temporary use, so if there's a temporary sale or a temporary display, it's that. So that's the way this is worded. We can change it, to allow for more, so then suddenly the amount of square footage on the site that's dedicated to sales is greater than the interior, if that's what you want. If you want it that way, that's why, you could get rid of whichever is less, and then, there's ways to look at it. So that's a point of discussion I think you guys need to have, is how much of area you want to allow this to occur.
Well, and how close to the, if you're next to a residential property, should you leave a setback between you and that residence? And then if you've got this stuff, can it just be set in dirt? Does it have to be an improved paved area? For rodent control and animal control. And is it gonna be lit with something that's possibly motion sensors, so it's not always lit, but if someone's in the yard, somebody can see it. I still have a lot of questions. There's still a lot of things to talk about in my mind.
Right. And that's a key point too, is technically the way this language is, and I pulled this language from a couple of other places. Paragraph 3 says the display area shall be supervised and shall not be maintained outdoors during hours when the business is closed. So this is anticipating more of a situation where someone would bring everything in at the end of the day. And I know that's not necessarily what we were thinking maybe. We were thinking maybe allow them to be outside, consistently. So we might need to reword or eliminate that paragraph. So it gets down, like paragraph A is really all about, how much land you want this to be occurring on a site, and then, you bring good points, security is a good, lighting, setback from residential, I think that's probably important, very important, actually. And then, I don't know if you want to just strike 3 right away and just say people should be allowed to keep it without having to bring it in all the time. But those are your topics. Maybe you could ruminate on, and you can bring your comments back to me later. If you.
More questions, Maureen? I get a sense that the commission's not necessarily ready to take action on this tonight.
Oh, not even close.
Mario, I think that we would like to take this under advisement and spend some time between now and probably the second meeting after this, because as I requested, the next meeting be devoted singularly to One Drop and their request. I don't want to, I'll tell you what, I've been awake since 5 o'clock this morning. I'm exhausted. And I haven't even got some cupcake on.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we have 90 days to address this. I think we will be well inside that deadline. I don't think the village council will be disappointed at all in what, one, we send them, and 2, the deadline that we were able to achieve. But I also don't think that, one, we're ready to deal with this in completion tonight. I'd also like to have Adam and Jack here to be able to have their inputs on this, so I don't think we'll address the motion tonight. Like I said, I just want to take this under advisement and be able to consider it between now and probably our next after meeting. We'll bring it up again, if that can go on the agenda, Madam Secretary, if you'd be so kind.
I agree with you completely. I think that's very important. Just a point of clear information for everyone, we would have to have a public hearing at the planning.
I thought that would be the case.
And then, so we would have to notify, we have to place a notice in the paper 15 days prior to that. And then it has to go to council, and the council has to have 2 hearings and then approve it.
All right, well, I appreciate all of that, and that timeline I still think is doable.
It is.
I think that if I can speak for Madam President, her intention was that we not dawdle with this, and that we move along and get something back to them as quickly as possible, but I don't think a Herculean effort is necessary, that we will get it done. And so My expectation is hopefully by the next meeting, we can have some thoughts prepared and some more questions formulated. Sort of my hope with this is to make it less granular. I know Maureen was thinking up some granular things to do on this, but I think, I don't know, I guess we'll talk about that. Hang on a second, Chuck, give me a second. Minister Schneider, please, if you'd step forward. Sure. Like always, name, rank, and serial number, and address your comments to the chair, if you'd be so kind.
Chuck Snyder, 2681 Hadley Road, here in Michigan. So I just had 3 comments. You might have already covered this story, I had to leave for a while. But on the first page, Article 2 definitions, we have something called open air businesses. And open air businesses has been put in place of outdoor sales. And to me, they're 2 totally different things. We shouldn't be disturbing open air businesses at all. An open air business is a business that is conducted primarily out of doors. The 6 people involved are not conducting business primarily out of doors. So there should be a new classification called retail sales with outdoor sales.
If you look carefully, you'll see that's exactly what this says.
I read it pretty careful.
Section 4.1.23 deals with open air business. That regulation is not being touched very much. It already exists, and it pertains to businesses that are just doing business outside. And so we get that. What we're doing is creating a new section on page 3, which deals with outdoor display sales temporary.
Yeah, but we're not temporary.
We scratched the word primarily also from the definition. So it would now be any business that is conducted out of doors.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the primary. So if you have a business inside and step outside, that's open air business.
Okay. So you're changing the whole deal there then, because that isn't what it says in the glossary of definitions or, so you're like doing, this is a total wipeout of what the book says. B on page, section 4.1.23, B, the display shall be supervised and shall not be maintained outdoors during the hours when the business is closed. That's when I sell half my stuff. People come when I'm closed because I'm only open 3 days a week.
Once again, this does not apply to you.
Okay.
Wait, what doesn't apply to them?
And then C, outdoor area shall not exceed 1 square foot of ground surface.
Mr. Schneider, please don't apply to you. They don't apply to you.
Well, okay, I guess I'm happy then.
They don't apply to you. Please, address your comments to section 4.1.28.
4.1.
And so read through that, and then next time we have a meeting, we'll talk about this.
I didn't spend a whole lot of time on that because it says sales temporary.
I understand that. Temporary means a permit, not the conduct of business. And so what I want you to do is if you'd be so kind.
I'm gonna go sit down and do what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, please do that too.
We've never gotten him to do that bad.
He just listens to me, what can I say? I want you to read through this very carefully.
Right.
And make notes, and come back next time when we talk about this. And all of these things we'll talk about in specificity,
Are
okay?
you gonna get a different document than this if you're envisioning?
Probably, by the time I'm sure it'll go on through that by the time he gets. But I think for the most part, it's going to look just very much like this. And if there's issues, and now once again, remember, this is just a straw man. I asked Mario to please draft up a document that was a good place to start, not necessarily to cuff everybody's hands, but a good place to start for a discussion, because this didn't exist prior. And so what he brought me was a document that he felt covered the area pretty good. It addressed some of the things that we had talked about last time. And we were just throwing ideas out. We weren't saying this is how it's going to be. And we're still not there. That's why we're not taking action tonight. Okay? So make some comments. And then next time when we talk about this, you can come up and say, I don't like this, or I want this, and we'll talk about it, okay? I give you my word.
Okay, I appreciate your insight.
Good, of course. All right, now, anything else? Okay, going back to tonight's agenda, I'm really telling you, I'm
I'd
tired.
like to table this issue
Good.
to the next meeting.
Let's do it. Do you want to make a motion, or do you want to?
That's what I'm doing. I'll make a motion to table this issue until the next regular
Set
planning
aside.
issue.
Set aside.
Like I set aside.
All right. Do I have support for that?
I will support that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, would you like to set aside the rest of the meeting?
Yes,
I do too. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to set aside the discussion regarding the annual action plan until the next meeting.
Do I have a second for that?
Support.
All right, I have a second for it. Madam Secretary, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is we can pretty much go to the end of the meeting. However, because I still have people in attendance, Mr. Weckel, I want to make sure that
Here to listen and observe.
Thank you.
if there are, you know, because if I stick to my agenda, I still have to like consider if there are any comments that are not necessarily agenda related, I want to hear them, and it's, I don't want Dave to say, geez, Gary, I sat here for 2 hours for something, and I wanted to say something. So if there's something you care to say, I'm happy to hear you.
I'm cool.
Okay, good, I appreciate that very much.
Is there a reason for, I mean, I definitely came here to make comments, but if I'm hearing everybody right, it's probably not a reason to make a comment now, maybe at the next meeting?
No, please.
Well, I mean, it's...
No, I'm serious. You know, part of my agenda is I get to a point where I say I'm willing to hear anything from the audience that's not agenda related. And so...
No, my comments are on the outdoor sales. So, since...
Oh, please.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I'm not about to make you sit there for 2 hours and blow you out.
No, nor do I want
I'm
to...
tired.
I don't want to, I mean, I don't want to say if it's not necessary to address it, but I don't want to keep...
Because we will be addressing this at the second meeting that we go. So please come back and...
Well, then why don't I wait until then?
I hate to have you sit here for 2 hours.
I'm just going to come back and repeat it all over next time anyway, so...
It's your pleasure.
I will say real quickly that I am very glad that this is something that's being addressed. Oh, by the way, my name is Scott Sluter.
Thank you, Scott.
58 Pleasant Street. I'm in a little bit of a special situation. I'm the owner of Oxford Farm and Garden that up until recently was located at 81 North Washington Street. So I know a lot of the concerns about, I like the idea of a permit, whether it's a 6-month or a year-long permit coming along so that the board and the village manager can keep an eye on things, because I never did own the building or the property, and more frequently, I'm sure Maureen knows about this, the semi-trailers out back, which were a constant problem, and I had no control over that. So now that I'm across the street in the formerly, which was Hometown Plumbing and Heating, this would allow, I think this is a good trade-off. This will allow us, somebody to prove that I can do this, as Mr. Douglas, I think you said, it allows us to, you know, there's a little trust involved by giving us the permit, but then we have to hold up our end of the bargain because the permit can expire and not be renewed.
Correct.
My situation, I can't say for anybody else, but I didn't realize until very recently, within the last few months, how important the outside display can be. Only because I've always had it since 2008 at that location, 81 North Washington Street. Now that I don't have it, I'm going to guess a good 90-some% of my walk-in business.
Wow.
It is, I have been hit so hard not having it that I never saw it coming. I knew that I would lose some, but everybody knows that I'm talking about a pallet of salt, which somebody brought up. I think Mr. Schultz did. It is so important to be able to be seen that I can look across the street and see my old customers that I've worked so hard to get, either going to the place across the street now, which I did not know was going to open when I moved across the street here, and they have no idea that I exist there. Now, I'm in the middle of getting a permanent sign put out and with some changeable lettering and stuff like that, but I can tell you from wholehearted experience, it doesn't work as well as being seen. And to take into consideration being pulled in at night, I suppose that would go for each individual business. In the wintertime, it wouldn't matter to me because I close at 6 o'clock, it's dark before that anyways. But all summer long, it would be nice to be seen. As long as it's not cluttered and it's kept clean and there's no reason for the board or the village manager to revoke or not continue the permit. And I'll leave it with this. If you go to the south of us and go to the north of us, there's two businesses that sell almost the same products that I do, much bigger. And I'm specifically talking about the Tractor Supply Company and the new Ace Hardware. I am definitely not against progress, not against new business at all. However, at any given day, if you go to either one of those businesses, you'll look outside and they have hundreds of things out there that they display. I mean, you drive down the road and that is their way of everybody knowing what they have that day or that week or whatever. If I can't have the same thing, those businesses have the ability to have radio and television ads and newspaper ads. I'm very constricted to what people see and word of mouth. So I would hope that you loosen this up a little bit on the businesses in here. It's important if we're going to survive, and I'm speaking just for myself because I'm on the edge right now of whether it's going to work or not. If we're going to survive, we have to be able to survive and have a little bit of a fight against the larger big box. So.
Scott, I give you my word, we're working very hard to rectify.
I know that, and this, I did want to come and say I appreciate that. I think when this is done, if we can come to terms with something, I think it will help everybody and still be in control and with Mr. with the village manager, Joe.
Thank you very much for coming, Scott. I really hope you'll come again when you address this in the future. And I thank you very much for your patience sitting through issues that didn't necessarily pertain to you, but I'm glad that we heard what you had.
I'm very familiar with this man.
Good. All right. Commissioners, any comments? Leslie?
None.
Maureen?
No.
Rose? Gary?
No, sir.
All right, thank you all. I appreciate all of your attendance tonight. Thank you very much for coming. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved at 9:06.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, I have a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:06. And a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.